Today is an historic day. It's the 15th of October, 2009. The headline on my website says, Savage to read historic speech today on air. Banned talker to deliver speech intended for Cambridge University debate. A milestone in American broadcasting. No American media personality has ever been banned by a Western nation. Savage's plight has been ignored by Fox News, ABC, CBS, NBC, and all major newspapers. The speech of the century that never was will be broadcast across America on all of the hundreds of radio stations that carry the Michael Savage Show. Listeners around the world will join us and listen to what Britain has banned via the Internet. Welcome to the Savage Nation. Let me begin by saying that liberals once warned the world about Big Brother. Remember the 60s? They were saying, watch out for Big Brother. That means an all-intrusive government that would overpower us, snoop on us, control us from cradle to grave. Well, now that the liberals are Big Brother, now that the liberals have become Big Brother, and now that they are Big Brother, it is in the hands of others to defend our fundamental liberties. Conservatives, libertarians, and independents are all resisting the dictatorial machinations of Barack Obama and his minions. So-called liberals are notoriously silent and absent in this epic battle for freedom. And here we sit today on the Savage Nation. Today I have to give you a speech that I never intended to give. What happened? Why am I here? What is this all about? Why is it so important to you? Well, on May 5th, I woke up to find out that I, Michael Savage, have been put on a list with murderers and terrorists. Let me say that again. A list of individuals banned from entering the United Kingdom, not so much for what they have said, but for what they had done. And the illegitimate Brown administration, the Gordon Brown labor socialist government, the people now hiding in a bunker as they're about to be thrown out the door, these people have now said that speech is activity. They have made speech the same thing as action. So they've made murder the same thing as speech, which they can condemn. And so I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, are they liberals? Would you define that as liberalism, or would you find that as socialism or fascism? Well, I'll let you decide what you would define it as. I know what I define it as. But I'm in a quandary. I always liked the English people. I always liked England. And soon after this happened, I made many, many appearances on British television, Sky News, the BBC. Yes, CNN covered me, but not Fox News. Yes, there was a little coverage in some great newspapers like the Washington Times, but not the New York Times. Yes, and think about this, folks. Michael Savage is the only current member of the American media ever honored with a profile in the liberal iconic publication, The New Yorker. Let me repeat that. The New Yorker is an icon of the liberal establishment. Well, they covered Michael Savage. It was I would say, middle-of-the-road coverage. It wasn't particularly one way or the other. And yet, I'm still not heard from on Fox News. But you're going to hear from me today on the Savage Nation, the speech that never was, canceled by government intimidation. So let me begin at the beginning. Mr. President, my fellow debaters, ladies and gentlemen, or shall I stop right now? Why don't we begin with an actual opening from Cambridge University, the opening that you should have heard had Cambridge University lived by its traditions. Let's hear it, folks.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Cambridge Union Society this evening for this very special debate. We have a distinguished lineup of guests, many MPs, as well as, of course, our guest of honor,
Michael Savage!
Well, my chair will be empty tonight. This group of children who has taken over the Cambridge Debating Society have given the society a black eye that they will never recover from. Now, they will try to hide it from their own archives, but remember, I don't think this has ever occurred before. The government of the Gordon Brown administration no doubt intimidated them, that's my guess, with the threat of cutting off funds. So I will debate as though I am there, even though my chair is empty. Mr. President, my fellow debaters, ladies and gentlemen, I've been invited to debate before you tonight against the insanity of political correctness because a terrible injustice has been done. In May of this year, former Home Secretary Jackie Smith, now fired, released a list of murderers and terrorists banned from entering the United Kingdom. Michael Savage was also included on this list. In doing this to me, she has linked and listed one of America's most beloved radio talk show hosts who has 10 million listeners alongside Russian skinheads who are in prison for having murdered 10 immigrants and videoed the murders, as well as a Hamas murderer who executed 2 Jewish parents, hunted down their 4-year-old daughter who they hid inside a crawl space, and when he found the little child, he crushed in her head with a rifle butt. That's right, my name is on a list with those people. Would not criminals of this caliber be arrested immediately upon entry into the United Kingdom? Or does this imply that all but those on the list are allowed into the United Kingdom? For example, Osama bin Laden was not in this list. Would he be allowed to enter the UK? Why would someone who has never committed a crime, nor appeared as a defendant in a criminal trial, nor been accused of an actual crime, be placed on such a high-profile list by a major nation of the West? I say that it is because of the continuing erosion of freedom of speech in America, in the United Kingdom, and in all nations where such liberties are supposedly granted, and this under the dirty veil of political correctness. My continued dedication to the principles of borders, language, and culture should seem no threat to a nation diligently aware of its own national identity. Admittedly, in my broadcasts, I may not reflect the keen and cool dignity of British gentility, but I have Savile Row in my soul. I must assume, then, that I pose a threat to the government, and one just as frightening as the most dangerous of international terrors, the thought criminal. This is a person whose thoughts and ideas are so powerful that they lead people to disobey the establishment. George Washington knew this. George Washington had become a thought criminal of the United Kingdom. Did you know that? And history has shown us that when an injustice is being done to a people, they rebel. It is those quiet, peaceful decisions made behind closed doors by polite gentlemen and their associates in seedy back rooms, shrouded in smoke, that provoke the people to action. Secret decisions with no oversight or communication of the kind which sidestep laws and civil liberties with total disregard for the voting public. This is what led to the tyrants of Hitler, Stalin, Castro, Hugo Chavez. We can throw a few others in. Rulers who, when given an inch, will run thousands of miles, perhaps right through our own homes. Ladies and gentlemen, people who disagree with the status quo, whether it's called political correctness or anything else, must speak up and be counted for. Speak for themselves and question authority. I, Michael Savage, have done nothing but this. Yet my opinions are casually shrugged off by so-called liberals in the government and in the media as valueless because they are not politically correct, an ideology with strict guidelines for what should be said and what should not be said in the limelight. Let me explain something. My crime is really nothing more than being a nationalist, a man who loves America, a man who has defined America as a nation defined by its borders, language, and culture. That is anathema to the internationalist Gordon Brown, Barack Obama, and the other internationalists who have now seized democracies across the globe. And as political correctness erodes the volume and value of our vocabulary, so too does it erode our freedom of speech and freedom to hold our lawmakers accountable. Accountable! An idea which in a modern sense can be traced at least as far back as the Magna Carta. People and their culture are not to be homogenized until they are compatible with other cultures and people. Compatibility must come from within, from debate and discourse and compromise and even legislation, but not from an arbitrary standard which might work for some people in some nations, but not, as Lincoln said, to apply to all of the people all of the time. When I come back, I will ask you, what kind of kingdom has Britain become? Does it still value free speech? This is Michael Savage. I'll be right back.
Savage.
I'd like to return now to my Freedom of Speech Award speech, which is a new freedom of speech, which is the ability to speak via talk radio and over the Internet, something not yet banned by Barack Hussein Obama and Gordon Brown. And every word I'm about to say to you comes from my heart. Whether it's the truth or not will be for you to determine. I swear on my Bible that what I'm telling you is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And I challenge Gordon Brown to do the same in his bunker in London. Let him get out a Bible. Let him get out the King James Bible and swear to God that he knows that I belong on that list. I doubt very much that he'd be able to do that. Now, what kind of kingdom has Britain become? Isn't freedom of speech a value that Western nations must preserve at all costs, one which sets us apart from dictatorship, anarchy, and fatal corruption. Yet it is precisely because of my freedom of speech that I've been targeted by the socialist government in England. This, combined with the appointment of the American FCC's new diversity czar in the United States, are further steps towards the extinguishing of independent thought on the airwaves and the so-called restructuring of free media based on the FCC's diatribe, according to Mark Lloyd, the diversity czar. Listen to me. In 2007, I was awarded the Freedom of Speech Award by Talkers Magazine. How could the winner of such an award be singled out and banned from traveling to Britain? Well, let's look at it another way. I remember in the 1960s when true liberals used to say, I may disagree with you, but I would fight to the death your right to say it. When have you last heard a liberal say, oh, I may disagree with conservative talk radio, but I would fight to the death their right to say what they believe in?